Polygon article, baby. Welcome to Warhammer 40k's anti-fascist future. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we're going there. Games Workshop has turned a corner after years of silence allowed hate to fester in its community. Did it? Games Workshop's... I mean, my argument here would be, if they think... I'm not going to pull it up now, but that stupid little post they made, Games Workshop made, about how, like, we're inclusive and we're for everybody. Like, if they think that was the moment that Games Workshop, you know, said no to hate, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't like hate before that either. Like, you don't have to make a Twitter post to be against hate, by the way. Hey. Anyway, Games Workshop's Warhammer 40k setting has a problem with fascist fans. Who are you? I'm looking for you. Alt-right partisans have tried to co-opt the hobby using images of brutal despotism from a dystopian setting to further their cause. In recent years, Games Workshop started to speak out about this problem, and many fans have begun resisting fascist infiltration as well. Wow. Some of the extreme right's most vocal opponents in the hobby include a irreverent group of YouTubers and other online personalities committed to anti-racism and progressive politics. Anti-racism means racist, by the way, just so people know. The alt-right began circulating Warhammer 40... Sorry. Hitler began drinking water at the early age. Like, I know they're going somewhere with this, but still. I mean, it's the same thing with Pepe. You know, it's like, so... They used the meme. They used all other kind of memes, too. I mean, whatever the left wing is memeing, the right wing is memeing it, too. Oopsies. I'm pretty sure Donald Trump was in left-wing memes as well. Anyway, during the run-up to the 2016 election, welcoming Donald Trump as God Emperor, humanity's all-powerful ruler. Should I look up the Spain? Wait. Donald Trump rally. I want to see if they have that. No, they don't have it. Because the... Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Like, okay. Say what you will about how cringe that is, because that's pretty fucking cringe to make, like, a giant statue like this for a candidate. Like, this was the lowest quality, the lowest one, because it's like you just put his face in there. Like, I couldn't see somebody doing that also with Biden or Hillary Clinton. Too bad women can't be space marines, but still. As cringe as that is, I mean, it's still, you know, wow. I would have rather have seen them actually make the Emperor, because that would have been pretty fucking cool. But anyway, at least some of these reactionaries intend to advocate for the kind of dictatorship featured in the game. I mean, maybe, but the game is a pretty obvious warning of, like, a really shitty future. But anyway, Ian Williams, a game designer and teaching fellow in communication at UNC Chapel Hill, it's a professor. He's got to be a genius. Suggests that alt-right fans of Warhammer 40k tend to be isolated individuals rather than a mass movement. Which is interesting, right? Because individualists, you wouldn't really think individualists would be like fascist as much, because fascists really kind of feel more like a collective kind of thing, you know, like a group of people, you know. Like, that's really what you have to be to have, like, one of these, not totalitarian, but, like, one of these, you know, big groups that, you know, communists, fascists, whatever you are. You have to be at least a collective of people, and at least individualists aren't usually that. So that's why I like them, because at least now, you can't really hurt that many people when you're just by yourself, unless you're Killdozer. But he suggests that most people sharing these memes were more attached to the imagery rather than actually playing the game. Maybe, because 40K is much about the setting. It's also about the game, because it just fucking looks really cool. But nevertheless, some fascists, including Matthew Heimbach, the white nationalist founder of the Traditionalist Worker Party, proved to be deep into the lore. He credited the game's bleak vision of eternal war as his inspiration for moving away from mainstream conservatism towards the more militant far-right politics. Okay. I mean, all right. Good for that guy. I mean, I found a person on the internet once who used My Little Pony as an allegory for why, like, that proved that communism was right. I mean, oops. Oh, well. You get psychos on the internet. Surprising, right? Fascist trolls occasionally appeared around the hobby in the years after the election. Sorry. I was always here. I didn't go anywhere. But they stayed mainly in the comment sections of YouTube channels and other online spaces. Yeah, because you banned me off Facebook. Games Workshop remained silent on these issues at first. During George Floyd protests of June 2020, the company released the following statement. Yes, let us read the following statement, at which finally erased all hate from the... Before this, though, they loved hating black people. But then when they did this, they put it all out. They were done with it, all right? This was the moment. Warhammer is for everybody. See, that's how we knew. And it's so funny to think that, man. George Floyd, like, ODing and stuff like that. Like, that whole debacle led to things like this, like Warhammer 40K saying they're forever. Because if that didn't happen, a lot of that stuff wouldn't have happened. That whole racial justice push that happened then. I mean, maybe they would have just picked another death, but I mean, that was the closest one they could get because he had the least responsibility for his own death, I guess, because he was overdosing instead of actually attacking a cop, but whatever. One of the great powers of our hobby is its ability to bring people together in common cause, to build bonds and friendships that cross divides. We believe in and support a community united by shared values of mutual kindness and respect. Our fantasy settings are grim and dark, but that is not a reflection of who we are or how we feel the real world should be. Nice. We will never accept nor condone any form of prejudice, hatred or abuse in our company or in the Warhammer hobby. Let me stop you right there, big boy. Like, your biggest groups of characters are based around hatred. So I get what you're trying to say, but it's unfortunate you're in the position you are because you can't deliver on that promise. When most of your profits are derived from selling models of, giant fascist space racists, yeah, it's hard to say there's no form of hatred or prejudice in your company. Kill the Xenos. I mean, whatever. Anyway, we will continue unless you want to change your entire product. Therefore, you won't really be Warhammer anymore. You will be Disney Star Wars. We will continue to diversify the cast of characters we portray. Vulcan was always here, baby, through miniatures, art, and storytelling, so everyone can find representation and heroes they can relate to. I mean, when I was growing up, I liked the Nick Fury comics because his name was Nick. I mean, that's all it took for me to really relate to somebody. Similar name. It was a coincidence he had the same, skin color, but if he was black, I think I still would have related to him. Just because, Nick. I don't think you really need that much. Whatever. Because, that's the thing I like about the 40K universe is, once somebody gets past the initial step of getting into it and they actually start making choices and picking, like, armies and stuff, it's interesting to see how that's a reflection on them kind of as a character, their personality, that kind of stuff. And I don't know, to kind of like that, I don't know, that's what I thought was the interesting way, the more real way that 40K was doing it, right? Because it was about like your actual, like your personality and who you were as a person, right? Maybe you were more into Space Marines or a certain chapter of Space Marines as compared to Tyranids or something like that. I mean, maybe you just did like the model, but there's also, once, you know, you're older, you learn about all the lore, you get into that kind of stuff. It's like, that's how that's like how people really should connect to things, other than being like, oh, wait, you know, Salamander's black. I'm black. I like salamanders. It's not that you can't do that, but it's just like, ooh, boy, what direction are we getting ourselves, like, ugh. I mean, because that's the direction of then getting, like, white identitarian movements, which, you know, whatever. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. But, and if you feel the same way, wherever and whoever you are, we're glad you're part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will be missed. Also, of course, at the end, they're saying, not only is this a message of, because basically if they avoided that last line there, the whole thing would have been a message of inclusivity. But then at the end there, they have to say, and if you disagree with this, any part of this, you will not be missed. Which means it's basically like, we don't actually care. We do condone exclusion. And, you know, if you have a problem with our ideas of prejudice, hatred, abuse, whatever, in the company, you know, we don't want you. So the Warhammer put that out. That was the statement, of course, affirming to which fucking, I don't know, hilarious for George Floyd. I think we need to blame all the Lord Emperor Trump memes for this. Yeah. I'm hoping, most positive outlook on the universe. I'm hoping that maybe Donald Trump's presidency will have the most negative effect on just Warhammer. Probably not, but that would be nice if that was the most thing that was most damaged from that. But not going to happen. Chunkers also say what you think about tolerating intolerance. Tolerating intolerance. Well, it's a tough question because it immediately goes into circular logic, right? Because tolerate intolerance, what's the idea? Is that intolerance is going to overtake you? If you don't tolerate the intolerance, that means you make sure that you're never intolerated or something like that. Like, which I think kind of more so boils down then to a moral argument, which then I think it's just kind of subjective, right? Then it basically just comes down to what side are you on? Are you the intolerated or are you the intolerant, right? And therefore, that'll basically give you your moral outlook there. Now, who's right and who's wrong? Maybe that determines on the exact issue. But in the end, I mean, is there any real right or any real wrong? That's why it's just going to come down to which side you're kind of on, right? Affirming to everyone is welcome in the Warhammer community and diverse cast characters, which, I mean, you got a whole fucking universe. So, yeah, diversity shouldn't be a problem. The problem is stuff like with the new Guard Codex, where it's like, why get rid of a character like Commissar Yarrick and put in like a female Creed character, which there's no problem with that, but why can't we keep some of the original characters that weren't diverse? Like, we can also, diversity is about, you know, bringing in, you know, things. So why not bring in more instead of getting rid of more? And of course, I know why. It's obviously because they want to come up with less rule sets. They don't want to have to write all those rules. They can barely do it the way they can now. But Commissar Yarrick will probably have a fucking stat line coming out eventually. But whatever. This statement did not put the problem to rest. Yeah. If they were paying attention to social media at all, the statement never did put the problem to rest ever. Look at the whole Gillette ad. Like, that was the hugest first one. And it, you know, the argument of go woke, go broke, but it hurt their sales for sure. And it's like, well, why not have your message without putting in the parts about screw you, other people? Like, you can get rid of that part. Like I said, if they just didn't put in, if not, you will be missed, it would be a way more inclusive message. So why not just not include that part? Whatever. In 2021, a man wearing Nazi symbols and playing under a Hitler-related pseudonym showed up at a tournament in Spain, prompting Games Workshop to make another statement condemning hate. I mean, obviously, I get this. I mean, do I think this guy was a real fascist? Maybe in Spain. I don't know. Could it have definitely just been a joke for the memes? I mean, I could have definitely seen somebody being... Because, you know, I also could see somebody showing up like Stalin with the communist army, too. That's what the Guard are. You know, it's like... You got the whatevers of Krieg, which look like a certain German type of soldiers. I think it's more World War I, but still. And then you got guardsmen that you can make look like... It's like... Does this... Like, man, this is just... I mean, I get it. When you have to write an article, you need things to back your stuff. But it's like... Is one guy's, you know, like maybe attempt at a joke or a joke going to be a statement on all of society and a whole group of people? I don't think so. I think you need. I think if you got, for example, an entire tournament's worth of people to show up as Nazis, that would say something about maybe the community, because that's a sizable portion of it, other than one person, which we know, as they've already said, that they're more so isolationist or independentist, which means you're going to have wackadoos. You know, that's what you get when you have independent people. According to Games Workshop, the authoritarian societal depiction in the game setting is satirical and exaggerated amplification of a tyrannical genocidal regime rather than an endorsement of it. I'm struggling to quite get what they mean. Like, I know what they're trying to say is, like, I don't think that Nazis, like that guy, if he saw himself as a Nazi, I don't think the Nazis really see themselves as all of that. Like, what, like, they're, like, okay, I do my thought exercise here when I'm putting myself in someone else's shoes, all right? Okay, the Nazi guy, he's thinking about 40K. He's putting the, yeah, I like that, yeah, you know, this is me, that kind of stuff. I don't think he's going, you know, the terrible parts, the commissar, whatever. That's probably has nothing. I think he's more so fantasizing about, like, you know, super soldiers and people that, you know, are like unstoppable killing machines and that kind of stuff. Like, tyrannical genocidal regime, I don't think they're so focused on, like, the government stuff. Like, yeah, they're focused on the xenophobia because it's a big part of it, but I don't see a lot of people with their fantasies of 40K sitting around thinking about the bureaucracy and thinking about, like, genocide on that level. No, they're thinking more about, like, exterminatus. They're thinking more about being in power armor, shooting a bolter and doing that kind of stuff, ripping with a chainsword. Not gas chambers, like the opposite of 40K. Like, you know, like exterminatus is their kind of version of, like, genocide, and that's blowing a whole planet apart. It's not like, you know, stupid bureaucracy killing of people. So I think missing a little bit on. That's why I'm saying I'm a little confused on really what they're trying to get at there. But Games Workshop messaging represents a new approach for the company that previously kept fans at arm's length. Oh, Joe's got some stuff to say. See, this is why, Joe, you need to come on the podcast. Whatever. It did not begin building a strong social media presence until 2017. Damn it, I really should have gotten active in Warhammer on YouTube before that. So I was thinking about doing more Warhammer stuff on YouTube, but what's the point? Because Games Workshop is not going to help you at all, but whatever. And only in the past few years has it adopted the kind of responsive and socially conscious voice that consumers have come to expect from online brands. I don't think so. I mean, I think its consumers have basically stayed mostly the same over the years. Maybe there has been some change, but this is the problem with the push for diversity. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have your product inclusive for everybody, but there's a problem when you're trying to be like Warhammer 40K. We want women to buy the tabletop game. Now, there will definitely be women who will be into it that will want to buy it, but by saying that they want to make it so all women are into it, it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know where my girlfriend is, but there's nothing you can do to get my girlfriend into Warhammer 40K. She's like your normiest kind of girl, she will never buy any of that shit. She won't even buy me any of that shit. That's how scared she is of it. That's like, this is your you have your consumers, right? And I think now, because of social media and all that kind of stuff, companies want a different kind of consumer, or they want to pretend like they have a different kind of consumer than they actually do, right? Yeah, I mean, come on, the liquor industry's been doing it forever. They don't show you drunk people. They want to show you pretty people having fun, right? Games Workshop has continued this trend with its decision to stop selling in Russia following Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I don't know. I don't know really how to have feelings about that. Like, I'm not huge about what they should or shouldn't do. I guess it's up to them, right? I don't know. But according to Aaron Trammell, assistant professor of informatics, wow, at UC Irvine, fascism in wargaming is not a new phenomenon. Of course not. I mean, I think not a lot of it started, but World War II wargaming is huge, and that's like, Nazis are a big part of that. It's like saying first-person shooters have an inherent a part of fascism, because of course they do, because like the Call of Duty franchise, like the World War II. I'm sure there's some fascism in World War I too, and it will require more than public statements to make a hobby more welcoming and inclusive. No. See, this is the problem here. Making the hobby more welcoming and inclusive. That's kind of, unfortunately, up to like your fans. I mean, if there is anything that seems like the fans, you know, or your consumers can gatekeep, it is kind of like the welcomingness and the inclusivity of your hobby, right? If the whole group of people, I mean, you really saw that in D&D with like the early 80s and stuff. You can try to make it more inclusive, but I mean, if you have a product for people that aren't like that, right? Like, let's say you make a product that's good for, I don't know, people that live out in the woods all by themselves, right? And you want to make that product more welcoming and inclusive, but that's not really what the product is about, you know? Like, for example, if you're into Warhammer 40K for the painting aspect of it, you don't want people around. Like, you don't need people for that. Like, I don't know. So, again, modern sensibilities, whoever got hired at Games Workshop, feeling that they need to push this stuff because, I don't know, maybe it's popular, maybe because they feel like it will help the brand, but just let it go, buddy. You know, do what you do well. And don't try to be something for everybody. Try to be something for somebody. There has always been a contingent of games in the tabletop space that have been suspiciously interested in Nazi and Confederate iconography. Trammell argues, for example, in the 1970s, some war games fascinated on, okay, so I was just talking about this, war games with the Nazi stuff. This is cool. I have no idea what this is. But I'm going to sit here and look at this for a second, because are these 40K things? I've never really seen these models used for anything. Like, that obviously looks like a, you know, like a Space Marine, a Terminator or something. Anyway, despite its recent association with the right, Games Workshop games from the 1980s adopt a broadly anti-authoritarian, whatever, if not leftist stance. Zhu has written extensively about the politics of games. I mean, it's like also not surprising. I mean, what company really hasn't taken a leftist stance for the most part? Especially when it's easy enough to label something leftist by just saying inclusive. We're inclusive, therefore we're leftist, you know, or therefore that is a leftist thing, so therefore we can say it's leftist, because, I mean, all businesses are inclusive because they're trying to get as much money as they possibly can. So I think that's whatever. Poked fun at the right, of course, you know. You should poke fun at the right. I mean, that's the right is going to be the easiest thing to poke fun at because they're traditional. So you have a whole stock of material because you already know what they are. An early Games Workshop scenario invites players to side with dwarven characters patterned on the workers of the 1984-1985 UK miners' strike, a labor action that was crushed by conservative Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's government. One orc figurine appearing in the White Dwarf even hoisted a banner with Thatcher's face on it. Rogue Trader takes on a similar political bent. Okay. I mean, what they're trying to do here, it seems like they're trying to set up evidence that 40K Games Workshop has always been left-leaning. I mean, yay, you've given me one or, some things here that were White Dwarves. How many White Dwarves they put out over all the years? I mean, of course they made fun of the right. Like, I don't know. That doesn't really mean anything. I mean, back in the day, that was actually called just being fair and balanced, but whatever. As Zeus says, the early Space Marines were painted as petty tyrants rather than superheroes. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's what they're supposed to be, is like space knights, right? Because it's like a future fantasy setting. I mean, if you really look at how the lore works with how the Imperium is controlled, it is basically set out kind of like the feudal system of tribunes and like vassals and that kind of stuff, where they just control certain areas, but pay an overall tax to the Imperium and that kind of shit. So, I mean, that's why. Like, how do they get rid of some of this stuff? Like, how do they get rid of the fascism? Like, they want to get rid of the fascism in their fan base, but how do they get rid of it when it's in the game itself? It's like, well, then you need to change your entire game to get rid of that if you want that not in the fan base, but then you're not going to have the same game. So, it just kind of seems pointless. It just kind of seems like, man, or just kind of seems like they're just trying to run defense to be like, we're not really that right wing. You can't hurt us. We love the lefties. All right. Obi-Wan Sherlock. Translate better American. Most popular faction in the game, Space Marines and their allies in the Imperium began to get the good guy treatment in marketing. Warhammer 40K fiction, the Black Library series has... I mean, first off, that's not surprising, though. I mean, they're humans. Of course, we're always going to give the human faction, like, the good guy kind of thing. Emphasizing the morally problematic nature of the Imperium, but advertisements and fluff as well as tie-ins, such as video games, undermine this by asking players to pledge loyalty to the game's totalitarian empire. It's called immersion. And asking the players to actually do it because they don't actually believe in the Emperor, because he's not real. It's called playing in a game. It's like asking me to, like, I don't know, pretend to be like a Bandicoot when I'm playing Crash Bandicoot. Like, nobody's actually pledging loyalty to an empire here. I mean, that's kind of the whole appeal of the Emperor in general, is it's supposed to be the idea that there's at least somebody trying to do good in, like, I mean, that's why he's like the Christ-like figure, right? Try to do good in this whole world of evil, and that's why we pretend, the Imperium is kind of like the good guys because they're trying to keep that alive somehow, that kind of little spark of good, and that's what's endearing about them, right? You see them fail, you see them try to succeed with trying to hold up to that, right? But you don't get other species doing that, like the orcs, the Tyranids. I mean, maybe the Eldar, but they didn't really do that much with the Eldar. I mean, the more they expand the Tau, the less they kind of get good guy-y. But William sees Games Workshop's Primaris redesign of the Space Marines as reflecting a broader context of creeping authoritarianism because they're bigger. They're bigger now. And that's more authoritarianism because I'm a little small soy boy and I'm scared. While the old Space Marine lines looked like bulky space knights, I mean, they're also just trying to get them to look like what the lore says they are, the taller dudes. Space Marines relieve. Okay, where's it going to get into anything more interesting? Some YouTube channels. I don't care about them because guess what? I'm on YouTube too, so you're just as valid as I am, bitch. These channels focusing on how the setting has changed over the years. Also, preempt some of the arguments focused on appealing to straight white cis men. For example, according to the game's current lore, all Space Marines are men. Women's biologically are told makes them incompatible with the procedure and turns normal humans into hulking super soldiers. Wow. So, a little bit of their bias check on here. Women's biology, we are told, makes them incompatible with the procedure that turns normal humans. So women aren't normal humans? I mean, no, it should be turns male humans, but whatever. As Wib suggests through the notion, originates from the throwaway line of tech notable from a 1988 article. Well, it is in the new Horse Heresy book too as well, I'm pretty sure. So they did uphold it because it has cemented the idea in a lot of gamers' mind that women simply aren't good enough to become them. No, I mean, it's just because they're different things. The Space Marines are coming from the gene seed of the Primarchs, which are males, so it kind of has to match with like the DNA or whatever. I mean, of course, it's a fantasy setting. They can come up with whatever they want, but there's a reason they don't do that. I mean, why did they come up with the Sisters of Battle? Why did they make female Space Marines just call them Sisters of Battle? Why is that not good enough? I mean, who knows? 40K has always sterilized fascism. I think that's what the article is trying to point out. I mean, has it? Sterilized fascism? I mean, it's like, I don't know, from what I've paid attention to, it's like, I mean, I don't know what you're trying to say by sterilized, because it really makes fascism look pretty fucking terrible if you pay attention to, like, the lore and the stuff. Like, yeah, if you just pay attention to, like, shiny people walking around with shiny armor and guns, it could make fascism look good, but I mean, that's like dictators doing marches with their armies. If you're simple enough to just look at the fancy things, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's all there is to it. I mean, but there's, if you pay attention to a lot of it, yeah. I mean, read the little snippets. I mean, even if you look at the game itself, how disposable the average man is on the tabletop. I mean, once you start paying attention, you're like, oof. The fact that you get people like, I mean, that guard codex hasn't come out yet, but like they had rules about if people would run away, you could just kill one of them and keep the rest of the squad standing where they are or something like that. It's like, yeah, that tells me what I mean, you know, kind of how shitty fascism would be. I mean, I don't know. I don't really see it sterilizing. I think it's sterilizing the idea. If you can say it's sterilizing the idea, it's sterilizing the idea of authoritarianism or whatever. But that all comes through the past of the idea of the emperor. Like when we're in 40K with the emperor's gone, you're given all these fucking clues that yeah, it's all shit. Man trying to keep this machine of the Imperium running is not doing the job that the emperor was doing, that could have done, that was actually doing it. But this is the whole idea of we look to the past, and the past is always better than the present, right? And that's, you know, we look at what men have, you know, people have done before us, and we're like, wow, how could they have done that? I mean, that's what I think they were kind of going for that, but I don't really see that as, I don't know, trying to make fascism look any better. I don't know, or sterilizing it. Then I just say the emperor was a good guy. What did I say that he wasn't a good guy? That he was a fascist or an authoritarian? I mean, you could be both, can't you? And if you never make the wrong choice, that is. Which, I mean, who's to say? Because 40K is a history. In the lore, it's also a history that's constantly changing, and you don't actually know what's real. So for all you know, what if the emperor did all the things that were right, or they just change history, right? You don't actually know. But in the lore of what you're supposed to believe, I think. I mean, actually, that's what I like about 40K is you can believe whatever you want. But I think in the general notion of context, yes, he is a good guy, because we're looking at the game through the context of being a human in the human universe. Women aren't, yes. Boo-hoo, women can't be Space Marines. I mean, that's fine. I mean, men can't be other things too. I think there are things in the 40K lore that men can't be. Oh well. Snipe finds that the whole debate frustrating. I mean, I'm sorry that you find it frustrating. It is incredibly tedious to me that we can put a man on the moon when we will spend decades arguing whether women can be fictional superpowers, fascists, or not. I mean, bro, it's fake. Don't care or make your own. Like, women can be superpowered fascists or not. Just not in the universe you want them to be. Make them in your own universe. No one's stopping you. See, this is the thing. It's not good enough. It needs to be what I want it to be. It needs to be forced. Anyway, this controversy has continued with Games Workshop. Horse Heresy, I think this is where they say, yeah. Oh my God. Rulebook facing criticism from fans who object to what they describe as trans exclusionary. How could they have done that? Language it uses to justify keeping women out of the faction's army. I mean, by maybe saying something about, like, I don't know, biology? Oops. I mean, but this is the Warhammer 40k universe. For all we know, okay, well, for all we know, trans people don't exist in the 40k universe because it's a fictional universe which has its own rules, right? So, one, trans people might not exist. Two, from the lore bits I have seen, if trans people do exist, they're most likely under the corruption of Slaanesh. So, anyway, but Games Workshop gender politics were never really just about the lore. Arbiter Ian has done a deep dive showing that the decision to make Space Marines all men derived from logistical problems in the 1980s that the company believed would have resulted in the overproduction of female models. Because they didn't think maybe people would buy the female models, so they just wanted to make male models, so they didn't want to make a 50-50 split or something. Oh well. Or maybe your target audience was male, and they wanted to buy models that, you know, were male, because they were doing something that involved, like, an action thing where, you know, like, female models aren't bad. People do love using them for certain things, but they like them more when they fit, right? For example, the Slaaneshi models and stuff like that, or a Sisters of Battle army or something like that. Like, like, I know they're trying to mix it in now with the guard, that they'll just throw a random maybe female guard model in there or something, but that's not usually how people want to, you know, build their own armies and stuff in their own heads. So it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, they want to make more male models, and I don't really think that had anything to really do with they really wanted to make female Space Marines. Maybe they did. Maybe somebody did. Or maybe somebody was willing to say they did at some point later in time because it became more socially acceptable and got them points. Retailers complained that customers were not buying as many, buying as female, so they wanted male. Games Workshop wrote all male Space Marines into the canon based on perceived demands of its customer base in the 1980s. But that customer base, along with the technology used to make their models, looks very different in 2020s. Does their customer base look that different? I mean, I am willing to say they probably have more female customers now. And I'm not going to say women. I'm going to say they have more female customers now than they probably did, but not a lot. They probably have a lot more women customers, but they were going to buy it either way because, you know, they're already into it, most likely. I mean, you look at statistics for this stuff. Yeah, some women do get into this stuff, but it's like, again, be something for somebody or you're going to be nothing to everybody, but whatever. I mean, I'll just keep making up different quotes. What can't men be? My mom asked on about, I think, Warhammer 40k. Are you looking? I mean, they're like the Seraphins, for example. A lot of the things in the Sisters of Battle army are specifically for women, which is the exact same thing. Because if you're trying to say that women can be Space Marines, right, then they would be like an Intercessor Marine in your exact same squad as your exact same thing. But in the Sisters of Battle Codex, the whole thing, I mean, maybe they will introduce men at a certain point, but they're not in there in certain things in certain squads because they say they're for all women things, all women models and whatnot. All female sex is really what that whole thing started on because it's based upon like monks or whatever, or nuns. So yeah, there are things that, yeah, men can't be. Different body types for guards. I mean, I would prefer to start with like fat guys, maybe. I mean, could there be a reason for that? No, I would prefer like maybe different body types before we have to start going with women. But yeah, why not throw women in there too? You could, or make a different kind of model. You know, like The Imperial Guard could be the trained soldiers, which are most likely going to be men because they need women to do other things like child rearing on a lot of these planets, because a lot of these planets aren't really at our level of social justice because they're all kind of like slaves, really, to the most part, like serfs. So maybe putting them, like, I know they got rid of the conscript models, but they kept the conscript models and gave you a bunch of different kind of body types. That would be interesting, but not going to do that. That's more shit for them to have to cast. As Arbiter Ian suggests, presenting how the lore has changed allows me to refute the main arguments of the gatekeepers. I mean, gatekeeping? That's their mythical fixed lore. Shouldn't be changed to appeal to new people. 40K has always changed to appeal to new people. Has it? I mean, that's something nice to say when you want them to change to what you want them to do, but honestly, I would say that's the whole point of keeping a loose lore in the first place, is that when you don't have a defined lore, everyone can kind of come up with their own thing anyway, so you don't have to make these straight-up decisions, you know? Like, yeah, they said women can't be Space Marines. Is that going to stop anybody from making their own Space Marine, like female Space Marine army, put little boobies on them? No, probably not. And they can go ahead and do that. And no one's going to go to their house and beat them up for it. Like, what difference will it make? The difference is what? They won't be validated by Games Workshop themselves. I mean, unfortunately, when you're a small enough percentage of people, you don't get validated by the majority. Because majority rule, unfortunately, with a lot of these things. Unless you want to focus on the minority. And then I think what we're seeing with a lot of things is you focus on the minority, you start to lose the majority. Until you're focused on the minority, and then the majority's moved on to something else. Arbiter Ian has also argued that 40K universe should be organized around the same sense of historical contingency. I don't know about that. It's a fantasy universe. It should be set around whatever it wants. Not really anything about history. Our history, that is. Even though they have the Browning machine guns and stuff in there from our history. The setting seems to represent the Imperium as the only possible way for humankind to survive, and the introduction of another human faction thriving under a different kind of society would go a long way to showing the Space Marine fascism is not a necessary evil. Oh, and they're going to talk about, I think, the Leagues of Votan. It should be said, though, the Leagues of Votan are technically classed as abhumans. So, they are technically not, part of humanity. So whatever they do is not really going to prove that humanity doesn't need fascism. It'll prove that maybe non-humans or abhumans don't need fascism, like the mutants. But unfortunately, anyway, that's most of that. I'm almost at the end of the article anyway. It's just going to talk about the vote on. Oh, let's see. Reflect on their work. Let's just have them wrap it up for us, okay? William points out that everyday gamers can help by getting more involved in their local gaming communities. He believes that fascists thrive on isolation and alienation. I don't think that's true. I think that the fascists. I believe that fascists are probably like, oh boy, police. Probably best if they were keep as isolated as possible from other people, especially other fascists, and allowed to just kind of do their own thing and be happy by themselves. I mean, people like fascists, I don't think should be around other fascists. You know, even communities, right? Maybe they could, but you could see somebody who's like maybe a fascist taking control of a community that might not start off fascist, but whatever. Their whole force to get everybody involved in all the things, and everyone has to be like, no, leave some people alone. It's perfectly fine. Therefore, anything we can do to connect with others, is that really true? Because you have to connect with others, but then the problem is with what it seems like their perspective is that they're going to want these others to have to agree with their perspective, and it's like, well, then you're really just going to be forcing others to interact with you to try to piss them off for what? And this is basically just going to drive them away to their own communities and kind of it just creates real fascism. Speaking out against hate in the Warhammer community is not always easy. Tell me about it, baby. Creators who challenge fascist ideas often receive vicious comments. Oh my God, boo-hoo. We get mean comments. Yeah, I mean, you say stupid things, you get mean comments. That's what happens. I mean, YouTube algorithms. Oh my God, I'm not as popular as I should be. Who cares? You know. So speaking out against hate and fascism. That's why I'm speaking out against this stuff right here. You know, it's like you don't get to tell people how to think, tell people what to do. You know, if Warhammer 40K isn't what you want it to be, oh well, boo-hoo. Move on with your life or make your own thing. Go ahead and make a whole, try to delve into the lore of Grimdark or something.